Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We're just launching today's training. Welcome, everybody. This is Interpreting Tongva Culture with Josh Andujo. Very excited to have everybody here this afternoon. We're going to give everyone just a moment to join the webinar. And as you join, please go ahead and you can type in the chat room a little introduction. We'd love to see where everybody is joining us from today. Please go ahead and you're welcome to share your name, where you're joining us from, and if you're affiliated with an organization. Very excited to have everybody here today. So we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. You are here at the Community Nature Connection Training Institute. And today we are featuring a training called Interpreting Tongva Culture with Josh Andujo. My name is Celeste Gasparic, and I am the Training Institute Manager with Community Nature Connection. I'm joining you today from my home in Northeast LA, the ancestral lands of the Tongva people. So I just mentioned, but if you're just joining us now, we would love to invite you all to type your introduction in the chat. We love to hear where everybody's coming from. So if you'd like to share your name, where you're joining from, and any organization that you may be representing. And so we're gonna get started. A little bit about Community Nature Connection. We are a nonprofit organization serving the Los Angeles area. And our mission is to increase access to the outdoors for communities impacted by racial, socioeconomic, and disability injustices. We do that by eliminating existing barriers through advocacy, community-centered programming, and workforce development. And a little bit about the Training Institute. The Training Institute provides workforce development opportunities that aim to increase participant knowledge and skills in the naturalist, interpretive, and outdoor recreation fields. So welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Today we are in a Zoom webinar format, and we're going to be hearing from Josh in just a moment. As you all have questions arising throughout the session, we would love for you to type your questions into the Q&A box. That is going to allow us to keep track of those questions, which Josh is going to be taking and welcoming from folks at the end of his talk. A reminder that we are recording this session, and we'll be sharing resources and the recording after the session is over. So at this time, I am very excited, and it is my great honor to present Josh Andujo to you all and to welcome him today to share with us in this training about interpreting Tongva culture. So welcome, Josh, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Maiha noone shavagnavi nonim herka noiha thomachar ushkoneha. I'm a descendant and live in the village of Shavagna, which is my ancestral village, is in Montebello. My Tongva name is Strong Standing Oak. I am a tribal member of the Gabrielino Tongva, San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, and I'm also a cultural dancer, and I'm the creator of Natives for Nature. Today, we're gonna be sharing a few things on surface shareable stuff with my tribe. Ever since Matt and Julia passed away, we're still in the process of trying to figure out who's going to be like a cultural educator and all that stuff. So like, we're still trying to get everything organized for right now. But yeah, I'm going to start off by reading the land acknowledgement. Something that we always do just to let people know that we're still here and the traditional territory that we are in. So it would go, we the Tongva people, the traditional caretakers of this landscape, are the direct descendants of the first people who formed our lands, our worlds during creation time. We have always been here. Our ancestors prepared and became the landscape and rules for the coming of humans with order, knowledge, and gifts embedded in the land. From our ancestors, we were imbued the responsibility and obligation to our original instructions, guided by protocol and etiquette, be a part of, take care of, and ensure the welfare in the extended family and community, defined in its most inclusive expression, the nature and to pass on those teachings, responsibilities to our children, grandchildren, and many generations to come, and to those that now live here. Ekwashem, Awishkoneha. So for the people that aren't familiar with Tongva, the Tongva tribe, our traditional territory is from Malibu to Laguna Beach and the 4 Channel Islands going into San Bernardino County. We did share our land with the Chumash, Tataviam, Serrano, Cahuilla people, and also the Ahashman of Orange County. What was I gonna say right now? I wanted to do the land acknowledgement for the village near Franklin Canyon, but unfortunately I couldn't really find that information. The only village that I did find that was recorded is Cahuenga, and that's where Hollywood and Studio City is. As a matter of fact, the Hollywood sign actually sits on the village of Cahuenga, and it's a place of above. Still to this day, you can find cities and places that are named with Tongva names, like the city of Azusa comes from the village of Asusagna. Pacoima comes from the village Pacoinga. Cucamonga, well, Rancho Cucamonga comes from the village Cucamonga. Topanga, Topanga Canyon. Cahuenga, Cahuenga Pass. You have a street in Santa Monica called Mumarahiko, which means breath of the ocean in our language. You also have Tongva Park, which was dedicated to our people. Luckily, the people at Franklin Canyon were able to pass some information about the park. I personally myself haven't been there. I have seen pictures and I've seen the key that they have set up right there. So that's what I wanted to share is the building of our key. That would have been a dome shape like this. The materials would have been used was willow for the frame, the framework, tule grass, sinew, and depending on the area you lived in, obviously you're not going to find most of those environments in specific locations. So like a thing that people for non-Tongva people don't know is that our tribe, even amongst our people, we're so diverse because you had island people, you had coastal people, you had valley people, mountain people, and desert people. So depending on where you live, you're going to use different environments. So if you're living in Riverside or San Bernardino County, depending if you're in the desert area, you're probably going to be using the native palm trees out there and the arrowweed and whatever materials they would use for sinew and cordage. The island and coastal people, from what my Aunt Julie was teaching me, is that we used whalebone and tule. So yeah, it just shows people that we're different from each other. Not all of us wore seashells and stuff like that. We wore acorns. And again, like whatever the environment we're in, we're going to use those materials for our everyday needs, for our clothing and food and stuff like that. Wanted to share the creation story of California and how earthquakes came about. This is a story that we usually teach children in elementary school, so they're not scared of earthquakes. But our creation story, we have 2 creation stories, but they're kind of like sacred to us, so we don't really share them to non-Tongva people. But this one, it just shows the creation of our world, Tovangar. And the story goes that long ago, before there was land and humans, Creator was looking down at the earth, and it was just the ocean at the time and the sea creatures. And he was trying to figure out where he was going to put his people, but obviously there was no land. So he was looking around and he seen a sea turtle that was a big, probably the size of an island, like a small island. And he seen the sea turtle pop his head out of the water. So he called upon him and he said, "Brother, I have an important job for you, but I'm going to need more than just you. You know, it's going to take more than just one person." So the sea turtle told Creator that, "Okay, well, I have 6 brothers. I'll go gather them and we'll come back to you." So each turtle that he found took a day. So we say that California was made in 7 days. And once the brothers came together, Creator started forming them into position. He reached to the very bottom of the ocean and he grabbed the sand and he placed it on the backs of the turtles. And that's when he started to make the land, the dirt, started forming the mountains and the hills, started poking holes in the soil to make the lakes, forming with his finger the rivers and streams, and then reaching into the heavens, grabbing straw and placing it into the dirt. And that was making our trees, the redwoods and stuff like that. Well, while Creator was putting all this stuff together and the world was coming together, it started getting heavy for the sea turtles. And the sea turtles started fighting amongst each other, saying one wanted to go east, some wanted to go west. Well, they started going their separate routes. And when that came about, a loud commotion happened. And Creator came down and said, what are you all doing? You know, I asked you to do an important favor for me, you know, like, it might be hard for you, but remember, you're carrying the weight of our people on your backs, you know, like the burden of the people. So like, it's an important thing, you know, if it weren't for you, the people wouldn't be here. So the turtles looked at each other and said, okay, you know, you're right. We do need to do this. It is a great honor. So they agreed to stay together here. Every so often, obviously, we tell the children that the sea turtles are going to want to wander off, take a break. And once the shaking and the craziness is done, the turtles are back and it's peaceful again. So we usually tell that to our children so they're not scared. We also tell it to, like I said earlier, to elementary level grade kids. So they could, I guess, relate to earthquakes, you know, so they could see the understanding of how we see things back in the day and how we still practice those practices even now. And yeah, I just thought that's interesting that when I heard that story. Another story too that I wanted to share was Rainbow Bridge, and that's how dolphins were created. And this is when people were formed and everything, and this was on the island of Pimu, which is Catalina. Creator told his people, I'm going to create a bridge, but I need you all to look forward. Don't look down, don't look anywhere, just continue walking, and once you reach the land, you're home. Well, people being curious, they started to look down because they're scared. You know, you're walking over something that you're not familiar with and you're going over water. Well, the people that were falling into the water, and instead of our Creator being angry and punishing them, he was showing them mercy, but he turned them into dolphins. So we always tell people that dolphins are our ancestors. We never hunted them. We never ate them. And for more of like a child friendly, we'll tell it that it was the kids that look down, because we always say that dolphins are like children. You know, they're always up to no good, always being nosy and stuff like that. And yeah, if you ever work with dolphins or ever have a chance to like a rehabilitation center or anything like that, or the aquariums that have them, or SeaWorld, anywhere that has dolphins, I recommend working with them because they are smart animals. You know, the Navy uses them to detect bombs and do underwater missions. And yeah, they are like, you know, they are like children. You know, they're fun to be around, you know, especially if they like picking on you. I know some of them do have little rude attitudes. And yeah, I just thought it's funny how dolphins are, but we always tell kids that those are our ancestors. So every time, like, especially with our children, if we tell them, like, we see dolphins, always say hi to them. We have a dolphin song. So it just shows that dolphins were important to us. And yeah, that's just some of the stories that I wanted to share with y'all. And so you could understand our culture and how we relate to everything, you know, because for us, we didn't have a word for nature. We were nature. We were connected to it. We needed the animals. We needed the land to survive. We learned from each other. So it just shows how we have a connection to the animals and to the land. So how everything's connected, you know. And yeah, I wanted to share those stories. Another thing I wanted to talk about was plants and trees that are important to us. Again, I'm not really an expert in the plants. I have done studies and stuff like that, but like our elder Barbara Drake, who unfortunately passed away, she was an expert in all that stuff, so she could literally tell you a lot of things. But from the stuff that I learned from her, I'm just gonna share like on top, like on surface knowledge, because what I want people to be mindful of is that some of these plants, they are medicine, but if you don't know what you're doing, they can cause harm to you and to others, because certain plants, they do contain toxins, not just the acorn. So if you're not careful with how you're providing it and stuff like that, like I recommend don't trying to do it because you learned it from somebody. You know, like we always try to tell people, be careful. There are some consequences when dealing with these medicines. But for the ones that I wanted to share, that's important to our people is the oak tree. We say we relate to it because it comes from a small acorn. And let me see, I have some acorns over here. But like, you know, big oak trees come from this little thing right here. And we say we relate to it because we're small people, we're a small tribe, we're low in numbers, but we're still strong. And what we relate to the oak tree is no matter where you grow it or plant one, it's gonna fight to survive. And that's why we like the oak tree, because it's a survivor. It's gonna fight to get as much water as it can to survive and grow. There's oak trees that I've seen that have been around probably longer than a lot of us here, probably older than this country. And you know, it's important that we connect to those trees, and that's how I got my name, Strong Standing Oak. Because for my background, for the members that know my, like, you know, just my background and where I come from, yeah, I just overcame a lot of stuff and just, you know, become strong for my people and for my family. And yeah, just be a survivor, you know, be thankful for the people that were here before us. Be thankful for the people that aren't here with us for what they had to go through in order for us to be here to keep pushing forward. So I'm going to go back to the oak tree. Not only was it a main staple of food for us, but the acorns did contain a tannic acid, tannin, which was toxic. There was a process when preparing the acorns. You had to dry them first, then you crack them open, peel them, pounded them into like a powder where it's kind of like flour. And then you're going to have to leach them. And that's going to take a few process as well. And then once the flour is done being leached, you could produce like an acorn porridge. You could also make bread, tortillas. I've had acorn pancakes. I've had acorn stew. I've had different things of acorn stuff. And, you know, being Apache from my dad's side, that was interesting because the connection that we have to Oak Flat, which is another area, to find out that we're acorn people. So I learned how, I thought that was interesting that both tribes of mine had a strong connection to acorns and stuff like that. The acorns, after the women, that's another thing too, wasn't just a women's job. Everybody took part in it. You know, the whole tribe came together, families would work together. The women and the men would be doing the work. They would gather the acorns, whether they're knocking them down from the trees or collecting them from the ground. They would store them in the granaries, which was made out of willow branches. The oak tree bark was used for dye. The outer red skin from the acorn itself was used for dyeing deer skins, baskets, just to make them redder. The branches were also used for mush stirrers and to make archery bows. I wanted to give an example of like what exactly, like for our regalia, here we had a tannet as well. Same thing with our shoes. So it just shows like how we would, you know, prepare our stuff and go through everything like that. But yeah, the oak tree is important to us because again, like it provided food for us, provided shelter as well for our people, shade, which was good for us in the summertime, especially. Another tree that I wanted to share was the willow. That provided shelter. When I mentioned earlier with our key, it was a framework for the house. And to spell house in our language is key, K-I-I-Y. I know people like to mention quiche or other dialects. And that's fine because, again, you know, like I said, we're different from each other. Each, I guess, band has a different dialect from one another. So it's okay. And I wanted to mention earlier, too, is there are other groups of Gabrielinos. You know, some of them identify as Quiche, Shoshone, or Kumive, and that's totally fine. You know, like, if you want to call yourself whatever, you know, that's up to them. They can't really say nothing. But Tongva was a word that we all wanted to identify as one, because traditionally we would go by our villages. So like I mentioned with my introduction, I would go by Shavagnavi, which is a villager of Shavagna. So instead of us going by different villages, like back in the day, we just wanted to identify us all as one. But unfortunately, others didn't agree to that. So, you know, like I said, it's totally fine what they want to identify as. But the willow tree provided shelter, the shoots for baskets, seed beaters, tooth cleaners, the bark for teas to help with fevers and aches. And it was a early form of natural aspirin. You know, if you could get the bark and soak it with water and you just wrap it around your head or just put a little strap, that'd be good for headaches as well. The seed beaters, they kind of look like a tennis racket. I wish I had one, but want to say, I don't know if it was for the community nature connection that my Aunt Julia did last year, but one of her presentations, if you go on YouTube and type in her name and just Tongva culture, one of the videos they show it, and she has the seed beater. The branches that I mentioned for like the mush stirrers kind of looks like a spoon, but it doesn't have, obviously it's not closed on the bottom, so it's just like a little loop at the end. But you could put like the soapstone to keep things warm into the mush or whatever, you know, just stir it. The wild rose, I know that was one of the plants that was listed at Franklin Canyon. Don't really know much about it other than that was the rose of our first woman chief. Her father called her Wild Rose, which is in Tongva language, Ochur or Otsur, depending on how you want to spell it. I do know that the fruits or the flowers, whatever you want to call them, I usually go by fruits. You could eat them raw or cook them. I haven't tried it, but I just read that through Barbara Drake. Another plant that was listed was chamise. The branches for that was used for arrows. It also made like a fencing for our sacred enclosure that we call the yovar, kind of like pretty much a fence. And then the arbor, I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's, if you ever been to a native ceremony or where would I say? There's a Chumash village in Malibu, Washoyo. They have a village recreation right there, and they have a beautiful arbor set up, but it's pretty much just like a arena area where people would just sit around or gather, and then you could have the dancers or musicians or whatever would be playing the songs, and you just dance in the middle. But there's a ceremony / public event that we have in October. It's called the Elders Gathering, the Many Winters of Gathering of Elders. And we usually have, it's open to the public, but it is ceremony. So we do tell people that aren't familiar with ceremony that to follow protocol, to not take pictures and record, because it's like a big no-no for Native culture. We just say that because of the spirits, that we don't know what type of energy is going to cause harm to our ancestor spirits. So we just say like, don't record. But we always have volunteer opportunities to help out and clean. So if anyone's interested and want to help out and to learn how to build an arbor, hopefully we have it this year. Now that things are finally opening up and gatherings are starting to be a thing, I recommend you do that. What else? The other plant that, teas were made from chamise as well. The medicinal parts of it that I will say, I won't go into full detail, but you could use it for skin infections. Teas were made from the bark. Oils were used from the leaves and twigs. It was also used for ulcers, chest ailments, and cramps. Leaves and twigs were ground into a powder, like a powder-like mix, and it was mixed with animal grease, and you use that for rattlesnake bites. Another plant that was listed was the laurel sumac. That was another medicinal one. You can make a tea from that, from the leaves. The fruits were used to relieve coughs, and our women would drink a tea after giving birth. That was to help with the pain and for them to go through the healing process. Lupine was another one that was listed. Leaves can be eaten after being leached and cooked properly. Green and blue dye was extracted from the leaves and the flowers. Seeds were poisonous, so I do recommend don't eating those. And the roots were burned, and the ashes were applied to help fussy babies sleep better. And you could either put it on the cradle or where, like the cradle board, or just wherever that your baby would sleep, and that was to help them. Mugwort was another plant. That one was used for like respiratory problems such as bronchitis and asthma. It was also used for urinary problems, rheumatic pains, and then rheumatic pains. It was also used for ceremonies for like girl puberty rites. I know you could also put bundles in the sweat lodge. Just that's some of the stuff that I'll share. Deerweed was used by Tongva women before and after pregnancy. It was to strengthen their blood. They would make a tea out of that. Elderberry was another important thing to us. You could make jam, jelly from the berries. Dye was made for basketry. Medicine, things like cough syrup was made from it. My Aunt Julie was saying that the cough syrup that they would make, the children would put it on like the acorn pancakes or something like that. Tasted sweet, so that was like a natural syrup as well, but it was also medicinal, so that was good, like one of the good benefits of it. We also made beverages that were made in like juices and teas. The bark was also used for skirts, and we also used elderberry for our instruments. This is a clapper stick. California natives, well, the Tongva, we didn't use drums. That was more of like the plains and like East Coast tribes. So we use our clapper sticks. We also use our rattles. This is made out of coyote gourd. Clapper stick, obviously you get the branch, whatever part you want to use. You're gonna gut out the inside of it. You sand it down. We usually would use either shark skin or lava rock. There was another plant, let me see what it was. It was horsetail. That was another form of sandpaper that we would use. Thought that was interesting. But yeah, we usually use our clapper sticks and our rattles. I want to say Craig Torres is a Tongva elder out of, I want to say like Los Alamitos, Long Beach area. I know he had some workshops with making clapper sticks. My Aunt Julia had workshops making clapper sticks. So if there's ever an opportunity and you ever want to learn how to make one, I recommend taking it. It's interesting to see how we can make instruments out of literally branches of trees. This one was made out of coyote gourd, has the symbol of the grizzly bear, which is a symbol of healing in our culture. I was told we didn't hunt them, but my Uncle Kevin told me an interesting story that took place in the 1870s. A gentleman found a village of ours with over 100 native people, and they're still living freely at that time. So I thought that was interesting. What I found interesting was when they welcomed him into the village, that they welcomed him with acorn bread, bear meat. And I thought that was interesting because I was told that we never hunted bear. But then doing more research and like talking to people, they did say we did, but it wasn't like if it was deer or something that we would normally hunt. It was more of like a ceremonial thing. I know during like winter time is when the grizzly bears would normally go into hibernation. So that's the time of healing for them. So we usually have like bear ceremonies. Yeah, and also too, like when I seen people wearing like bear regalias with the grizzly bear, like then where I was first told that we didn't hunt them. But then after asking questions like, okay, like where did they get the bear fur from? You know, I'm sure it's not just gonna pop up out of nowhere. There's no store back in the day to just buy them. So like you had to have hunted them or done something with it, you know, in order to get that. This is made from Uncle Jerry, the coyote gourd with the elderberry inside, and the deer leather with the sinew, which is made from the deer as well. The deer, like the deer skin. White sage. Oh, back to the elderberry. The bark was used for skirts. That was another thing. But the white sage, besides of it being ceremonial and spiritual, like everybody sees it as, it also was used for foods. For the leaves were grounded, and you could eat them in a porridge or a bread. I know the leaves were also used for once you're getting older and you start getting gray hair, it was to help whiten it, to give it a more like a brighter shine, which I thought was interesting, especially because, you know, nowadays seems like people don't want to get old. You know, people are trying to make themselves look younger, but for us, being old was a good thing, you know, because that's another thing too. We say there's a difference between an old person and an elder. An old person is just someone that's old, and an elder is an elderly person that you can learn from. And, you know, for people that was considered an elder, that was a great honor because, you know, you're like a teacher, a library, a walking library, you're teaching people and stuff like that. So, yeah, I thought that was important that we embraced it, you know, because even death, we didn't fear it, you know, because we seen it as normal. And it is normal, you know, people are going to pass away sooner or later, but nowadays it seems like people are scared of that as well, you know, because obviously, you know, we don't know what's going to happen after, but in our culture, we're told once you pass away, you become a star. And that was for our ancestors to look down on us, to guide us, and to make sure that we're doing right for our people. And yeah, I thought that was interesting. Another thing too that I wanted to talk about were some of the other plants. Won't get into the medicinal side, but I will go into like the edibles, the plants that were edible and plants that so like blackberries, you could obviously eat them raw. The prickly pear, you could eat them raw. I know we cooked them. I know we made them into a juice and jam. We also used it as like a hair conditioner, helped with your hair, and it also helped with headaches. The California grapes, you could eat them fresh or dried. The leaves were steamed, and the green shoots were eaten raw or steamed as well. Chia was a protein source for our people. You could eat it raw. Chia pudding seeds were parched. We always tell people when we would eat chia, we do like a pinch, not as much. You know, I've seen people drown their water in chia, and that could cause harm because it kind of like expands, like from what I was told. I don't know. I never really had problems with it. I did overdo the chia one time, but I didn't have no problems. But I was told not to do that, and it's not going to work with the protein. You know, you're kind of like draining. I don't know. I was told that you're pretty much killing off the energy. But if you do little pinch size or a teaspoon, you just put it in your water, in your pudding, whatever. You know, you could put it in anything. You know, I put it in like a cucumber limeade that I usually make, or like a cucumber water, and I just add chia and mint leaves and just let it soak in there and like just drink it like that. Elderberry, the flowers were eaten, the berries, lemonade berry, you could put into drinks and it'll taste like lemonade. Well, put in water and it'll taste like lemonade. The manzanitas, the seeds were grounded into a flour, made into a mush, or you could bake it into hot ashes as cakes. The berries were eaten raw or dried for use in the winter, mixed with acorns. Also, you can make a cider by reducing the pulp to a powder, mixing it with the water. Teas were made from their blossoms. The California cherry, the fruit was grounded into cakes. The pit of the fruits may be leached, crushed, ground, and boiled in order to thicken soups. The fruit, however, is not to be eaten raw. It can trigger an allergic reaction, and leaves contain hyaluronic acid. So it's recommended to boil the leaves carefully to remove the toxins. The California buckwheat, the shoots and the seeds were also edible. We ate those. Like I mentioned with the California rose, the fruits were eaten raw or cooked. Miner's lettuce, never really came across that. I've seen pictures of it, but I still haven't found any in like the wild. But I've heard you could eat those raw, you could cook them, picked in the springtime before the flowers appear or after removing the flowers. The roots, you could also eat them raw. The tiny bulbs, you could eat them raw or roasted. Their black seeds can be cracked open and eaten. You could also make it into a juice. California poppy, that was also edible. The leaves were gathered before flowering, cooked and eaten. The flowers, as well as washing them through. You have to wash them through, obviously. White sage, I already mentioned that. Bladder pod, that could be cooked or baked. The agave flower, the buds can be eaten. Gathered in the springtime or late autumn and boiled to remove the bitter taste. The buds cooked in the earth ovens. It's kind of like pretty much like a fire pit, but in the ground, like in the dirt. I don't know if you ever seen like Polynesians or like when Hawaiians cook for like large gatherings, they'll cook underwater, like underground, similar to that. What else? Reduced, yeah. You could also reduce them. The bud back to agave. Cooking the buds this way, reduce them to a gummy state and worked into cakes, kind of like a cake batter. The fiddleneck leaves can be cooked. The seeds can also be roasted. That was some of the edible plants for land animals that we did eat. You had fish, kior, which is fish in our language, shukat, deer, rabbit, abalone. Here's the red abalone, which was native to out here. You can also get different sizes. So I use this one, obviously, for my sage. That's why it has all burnt in the middle. These I use for jewelry. We would use this for a bowl. The holes at the very end, you would seal them with tar at the La Brea tar pits area, or you could gather the tar into the ocean. If the bowls would break, you would also get a spoon, which is in this part right here. Make like a little spoon shaped thing. You could use that, make jewelry out of it. Something like this from a broken piece of abalone. So we would make jewelry from it. It was a food source. Turbans, mussels, clams, scallops, trout, salmon. That was another thing that we ate. Mice, ground squirrels, the pronghorn antelope when it was down here. That was another food source. The California quail, mourning doves, ducks were another food source. I put animals that we didn't eat. But like I mentioned earlier, when I found out the story that when our people offered the gentleman bear meat, so I put bears, but I put it also as a symbol of healing. And from what I was told from my Uncle Kevin, we were told that our shamans would take form as grizzly bears, so that's why we say they're healers instead of so we wouldn't try to hunt them as much. Eels, seals, sea lions, crabs, otters were also eaten. Insects was another form of protein. You had grasshoppers, crickets, caterpillars, earthworms. You could either roast them, dry them, or boil them. What else? For the deer, we have a deer song, and we also have a hunting song. Like I said, now that things are finally opening up and gatherings are finally happening, hopefully the tribe gets together and dance, because it's been over a year and some change, and like sucks not being around everybody. But I do recommend going to our Acorn Festival, which is usually in November. That's in Claremont. I forgot the little nature center right there. If I find out and you want to find out more of like the location, you can follow my Instagram, the Natives for Nature. But we have our Acorn Festival. We have our Moonpiton Festival, which is usually in Long Beach. That's the gathering of saltwater people. It's not just Tongva. You have the Ahashman, you have Ohlone, Kumeyaay. You have a lot of tribes from California that get together. We share our songs and culture. You can see the difference and the similarities. It's an interesting event. What else do we have? The Acorn Festival, Moonpiton, the Many Winters Gathering of Elders, Pitzer College Powwow. That's usually in around April, I want to say. I don't know if we had it this fall. No, obviously not, but that's another thing to look for. If you want to look for sites or places that represent us, there are some village recreations I do recommend checking out. They are pretty awesome to see. You have one at Heritage Park, and that's the village of Chokisagna. And you have Mount Baldy Visiting Center as another village recreation. You also have Franklin Canyon. Well, I wouldn't say a village recreation, but they do have a key set up right there at Franklin Canyon. You have a key at the Audubon Center at Debs Park. Where else do we have representation? Like I mentioned earlier, Tongva Park doesn't really show any, like, it's just named after us, to be honest. But wanted to talk about that. Museums, now that museums are finally opening up, you have the U.S. Natural History Museum of LA, the Autry Bowers Museum in Santa Ana, the San Gabriel Mission. There was a fire last year that unfortunately hit the mission. So they're still doing reconstruction right there, but they do have a museum right there that has our baskets and a lot of our culture. You can learn about our medicine woman, Toiparina. She's like our first revolutionist that everybody in the community honors and praises. Even though her revolution was unsuccessful, we do honor her for organizing everything. And from what I was told as well, there were other revolts that took place at Mission San Gabriel that were successful. And I've heard other tribes that did help out, from Uncle Kevin. He does a lot of our warrior culture, and it's interesting to learn about that, because a lot of people always ask, oh, I heard like Tongva people were peaceful. And it's like, yeah, we were, but we also had protocol back in the day, and Tongva people couldn't just go to other villages and make themselves at home. You had to either be invited or you had to have a reason to go there, whether it was to go through another village for a trade or something, but you couldn't just go anywhere and make yourself at home. And we also have protocol for other tribes as well. You couldn't just go into other tribes' gathering sites, ceremonial sites, hunting grounds, and stuff like that, because that would cause war. Or what I thought was interesting is a challenge like a fight. A warrior from a village would go to another village and they would fight with each other. You pretty much call each other out. And just learning from Uncle Kevin. That's another person I recommend learning from, because you can learn a lot about it. We have a variety of different war clubs that he makes traditional. And it's interesting because a lot of the other tribes in California only have a small war club, probably like the size of my forearm. But us, we have different varieties. They have some that have like spiked tips, some that are just like curved, kind of like the Spanish said it was like a Middle Eastern sword, just by the way it was curved. And we like pretty much recreated our own war club like that. And I thought it was interesting to learn about the war tactics and stuff like that. But another thing I wanted to tell people to be mindful of is that we're not just cultural people, and we're not people of the past. We do everything. We have artists. If you do want to support some Tongva artists, You have Jessica Calderon. She's a rapper. I recommend listening to her music. You have Kelly Caballero. She's another artist and musician. You have Megan Durame, who's a poet. You have Mercedes Durame. She does a lot of art exhibits. River, I forgot his last name, and I don't want to try it and butcher it, but he's another Tongva artist. If you want to check out his work, you could go to Indian Alley in downtown LA. There is, I want to say These Days Gallery is the name of it. And there's a little alley right next door. You could check it out. Sometimes it's not open though, so you might have to talk to the people in the gallery or the security to see if they'll let you in. But Indian Alley is important because that was the location of the relocation program, and it wasn't just for California natives, but you had people from the plains and the East Coast that were being promised of job opportunities when really there wasn't. So Indian Alley became important for a lot of tribal people, and and not a lot of people know, but Los Angeles alone is just so diverse with so many indigenous people from not only California, but the United States, Canada. You have people from Mexico and South America as well. So those are some Tongva artists I recommend checking out. Some Tongva books, if anyone's curious to learn. You have The First Angelinos, Oh My Ancestors, The Birth of Los Angeles, and the Genocide of the Tongva. My Aunt Julia also made some books. Her books, did I write them down? Oh, is Tongva Women Inspiring the Future? It's a kid book, but it does mention some of the women that she honored and some of the people that we did honor amongst our tribe. You have Juana Marie. One of the stories that's probably misunderstood and misread is Juana Marie. People say she wasn't Tongva, but from the research that the tribe did and everything, she was a woman that was alone for 18 years on San Nicolas Island, and for her to survive by herself, it's pretty interesting. And a lot of people say that she wasn't Tongva because the people didn't understand her, but from doing I didn't do the research, but the tribal members that did do the research, from her being so separated for so long, her dialect wasn't the same as the other people. So that's why they didn't really understand her. And because for her being separated from the colonization and everything, more people lost the language. So that's why we say that that's the way we try to correct it, and I think it's important that we do correct historians and anthropologists and people that are in these type of fields, because one, we always tell people we've been living here since time immemorial. We didn't come from the Nevada area or Basin area, because our place of emergence is at Cuvangna, and that's at Cal State Long Beach, and that's where the birth of our people came about. So we always think it's important to correct the academia and other types of field that try to tell our side of the story, and I'd rather take information from people that have this information that's been passed down for thousands of years, and to relearn this stuff. And I want to tell people too, yes, from an outside point of view, our culture is beautiful and it's interesting to learn about it, but our people had to go through so much for us to keep this knowledge hidden and, try to keep it alive. And now that we're trying to keep it alive, it is complicated because there are some places that we can't have access to with the knowledge because it was destroyed over time. We had the Spaniards, you had the Russians and the German fur traders that were going into the islands, taking our people. You had the Mexican period that, a lot of people, I don't want to say choose to ignore, but I see a lot of California natives not mention that part. And for us, that was where the policies were created to kill us, and it wasn't just this leftover Spaniards and mestizos. These were other natives that were taking part, volunteering to get rid of us. You had freed Africans that were living in Mexico that were paying other people for the land and stuff like that. So when we tell people all this history. But I think it's important because if we're going to talk about decolonization, for me personally, I think it's important that we acknowledge all parts of it and not just leave out certain things, because how are we supposed to move forward if we're going to be ignoring certain stuff? And you know, it's hard for people to understand, especially when people always say like California is part of Mexico. And it's like, yeah, but for 27 years before that and during that was our land, was the Chumash land, Ohlone. You had my Apache side in Arizona through Texas that were dealing with the same stuff. You know, even with the Apache side, we were at war with Mexico for 19 years because they killed Geronimo's family, which we know as Coyafle. So like, you know, it's just telling people that, yeah, it was part of Mexico, but we need to be mindful that there were native people still living there, you know. And my family, fortunately, for like when I did the research and stuff on my family's history, we're lucky enough to still be in the same area, you know, for our ancestral village to be in Montebello, for us to work on the rancheros that were, two of the rancheros that were there in Montebello, the oil refineries, the Simon Brick community, the fruit fields, all that stuff. And even to this day, we're still living here. And to say that we've always been home, that's important to me. But yeah, hopefully that was enough information for everybody to take in. You know, if you want to learn more, please reach out to me on Natives for Nature, and I could help you out with any questions or point you out to some other people's directions if you want to learn stuff. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Josh. That was really a wealth of knowledge. I thank you so much. I think on behalf of everybody for sharing all of your information about history, the culture, the stories. It's really a treat to hear all of this from you. And I think it's inspiring to dig deeper and learn more. So thank you so much for offering for people to follow up with you at Natives for Nature. If anybody has other questions or wants to learn about more resources, I'm also going to be sending a follow-up email to everybody who registered today with a list of the resources that Josh mentioned during today's training, so you don't have to remember every single one or write them down. But in the last 7 minutes we have here, we'll take a few questions from the Q&A box, if that's okay with you, Josh.
Yes.
Excellent. We have a couple of questions kind of in the similar vein. These are coming from a non-Indigenous people. So like as a non-Indigenous person, how would you advise that they respectfully share the story of the Tongva people here in Los Angeles? One of these people is a teacher that's teaching high school students. So they are non-Indigenous, but want to respectfully share the history of the Tongva people.
Yeah, so like I tell people that ask questions like that, like you don't have to be native or not, you know, like just be respectful of the culture, you know, and like build the relationships with the tribe. But if you want to teach people, best start off like with the land acknowledgement, let people know like who the territory you're at, you know, the original people that were here. That's a start. The books that I recommended, some of them are adults friendly and some of them are children friendly. So if you want to learn for the older people, I recommend the First Angelinos and the Birth of Los Angeles and the Genocide of the Tongva. Inviting people, Tongva educators, you know, like if you don't know anybody, again, you could reach out to me and I could point you to the direction. Yeah, just being respectful, you know, and like tell people, like just acknowledge us is a way to start, you know. After this, wherever everyone's going from here, you could tell your family members, friends, partners, or even your students like, hey, you know what I learned yesterday or today is, did you know California had Native Americans, you know, and start that conversation from there. That's a way to start.
Thank you so much. That's great. Like I mentioned, I'll send around those books that Josh just mentioned. So people are encouraged to dig deeper and learn a little bit more. We have another question that came in. What projects are you currently working on, Josh, either individually or as part of a group? And can the public participate in some form?
Yeah, so I have a lot of projects right now that are in the works for Natives for Nature. We do a lot of things from like trash cleanups. They could be anywhere from the mountains to the LA River or into the beaches. We also do fire prevention cleanups. I do a lot of survival workshops, teach people just basic survival knowledge in the mountains and what to do if you ever get lost. Few murals are in the works, so I'll be putting more information on that as well if anyone wants to help out with that. And another organization I want to shout out is my cousin's organization, Canyon City Environmental Project out of Azusa. They do a lot of good work as well. If anyone would like to help out with the cleanups that we do right there. I do also community hikes for anyone that would like to learn how to hike or that are familiar with backpacking and hiking. We always do that stuff as well. The hike that we have with high hikers is gonna be in Tongva Peak in October. We have one coming up Friday, which is gonna be at Sandstone Peak in the Santa Monica Mountains in Malibu. Yeah, I just teach people how to do like foot movement, foot placement, and how to tie your shoelaces a certain way to keep your feet from sliding, and what type of socks, and like just basic hiking knowledge. You know, if anyone would like to learn, that's another way.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. And this is a great question. What changes do you hope to see in the next 20 and 50 years, and how can we be stronger allies?
Well, I would like to see the tribe get recognized. I mean, you know, for the tribe that I'm from, the Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, we are state recognized. We do have a chief, we do have a council of elders and a tribal council, like the stuff to be a tribe. But I would like to see us be recognized by everybody, because, you know, even now we're like, in my opinion, you know, it does suck, because like Maya said, you know, she didn't want us to be invisible. And, you know, like I have her picture right here, and I learned everything from her, and I'm thankful that I had her in my life. And yeah, I just, hopefully we're more visible, you know, and like there are projects that are coming about. Like I know in Claremont, Indian Hill, they're going to change the name to Tongva Indian Hill. I'd rather have it Tongva Hill, but that was a decision made. The 210 freeway going to Arcadia, it's there's a structure that's shaped as our baskets, and under the Metrolink is the belly of a rattlesnake. So, you know, there is representation. We are finally coming out, which is good. So hopefully we are more recognized within those, you know, within that timeline.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh, for sharing with us. It's really meaningful to have you here, actually about exactly 1 year after your aunt Julia came and did a presentation with the Training Institute. So thank you for continuing her legacy. And thank you to all of the participants for joining us this afternoon to hear from Josh. And I'm sure everybody is just ready to dig in and learn more. So I will be sending around follow-up email, and I'll make sure to include all of the great resources, books, and the artists and everything that Josh mentioned. And there will be a recording also of this session, which will be posted to the Community Nature Connection website. So thank you all so much, and don't forget to follow Josh. You can follow Natives for Nature. That's Natives with the number 4 and then Nature on Instagram to learn more about his work. So thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Yeah, wish kuneha. Thank you, everyone.